programs, and we ended up instituting a minority manager brokerage program for trades. And then we wanted to expand our manager of managers program, or institute a manager of managers program. And back then we interviewed 3 firms: Progress, Exponents, or which was used to be FIS, and Attic. So these 2 presenters have presented to us in the past. So it's nothing new to them. Some of the same, I went back to the presentation from before, and I think it was 14, Kristen, I think it was. Some of the same information is the same. Some assets have grown, some structural changes have occurred, but overall the product is still the same. We would be looking to transfer the responsibilities, not the actual assets, but the responsibilities of managing that program to one of these 2 managers. So given that umbrella, I put some questions up there if anybody wants to ask anything, and if not, we'll let Kristen give her spiel on the presentation that NPC sent to us, which is a summary. And then we can go into the manager presentations. Typically, we ask the managers to present. Either we can ask questions as we go, or we can ask questions at the end. We give them a time frame to answer the questions, and then we move on to the next manager. Then we come together in a closed session. We ask Kristen any follow-up questions that didn't get clarified. She gives her insight, and then we usually typically take a vote on, well, we have discussion about what we're thinking, then we take a vote. Is all that clear? If so, we can move forward to Kristen, and she can take over from here and go over her presentation and then bring in the managers.
Sure.
Okay, Kristen, are you ready?
I sure am. So thank you. I first would like to, so great to see everyone. Glad we're moving towards this search at this juncture. And just to give some clarification, we are looking at a manager of manager to take over Progress, which was also a manager of manager. For those who were not part of the process previously, or maybe new to the board, a manager of manager is a manager that basically aggregates managers under their umbrella. And they look to optimize the portfolio. And instead of optimizing stocks, which is what we normally hear when we think of a manager, they're optimizing managers. So they'll usually have anywhere from 6 to 12 managers that are on their platform. And they will say, okay, whatever the mandate is, and in this case, the mandate is global equity. And so they'll look to identify managers that either have a global equity straight out, or it may be emerging market equity, developed non-US equities, and then US equities. So that all of those types of managers is what would make up what would be considered a global mandate. And so they'll look to optimize managers, find the best managers that they can. These managers do and are typically diverse managers. And so that's really what we're looking at. As Christina had mentioned, 3 of the managers had presented before. We did end up selecting Progress, but just to give some additional color, though it was a pretty tight race, if you will, if you want to look at it as a race. It wasn't like it was, you know, we love Progress and we hated these other managers. It just ended up, you know, that we selected Progress, which was one of the oldest managers out there. But of course, they're no longer operational. So we're my guidance was to look at the other 2 managers that were very qualified, very active in manager space, and you know, re-interview them for this position. So I did put together a presentation. I don't know if that is something on the screen. Should I share that on the screen, Andrew? Or do you
you can either share it, or, I mean, are there any fees? I guess you do what you feel comfortable with. Just realize that if you do that,
yeah,
that entire document is a public record.
Does everybody have the document already?
I'm sorry.
I have it. Is there anybody who does not have the document? It was emailed to everyone, I think.
Yeah.
Kristen, I have a quick question. Can you explain the why Progress? I know we got a letter. Explain why Progress is no longer a business going forward, because I think that goes to some of the first 2 questions that I asked on the list, so that people understand.
So my understanding it was a bit abrupt, quite frankly. And my understanding was that their level of asset outflow was significant. There were a number of programs that were ceased to be in existence as it relates to diverse manager programs, coupled with some pretty significant client losses. Again, as we mentioned, Progress was one of the largest and oldest managers, which also means that I'm going to call it bite size. So account size was pretty significant. So any one account might be $500 or $600 million, which is a pretty significant dollar amount. And so if you lose several of those, or if a program is canceled, then that creates a huge challenge as you look at the asset outflow. That's sort of the high level. I think that there is a bit of a backstory here. Thurman White, who was the founder and CEO and chairman of Progress, I would say probably over the last 8 years, eight, maybe even 9 years, he's been looking for a way to sort of unwind himself out of this business. And I think that there's always been some challenges around valuation. So the way a owner such as him would be able to wind out is to get a valuation of the company, and then the company pay that founder, for the amount of shares by, times the valuation of the company. So you'll value the company, and then you'll value what individual shares are, and then you pay them out. Well, that number, from my understanding, again, not working at the organization, but just sort of the information I got over the years, was pretty high. And I don't think that the company could really afford to pay him out in that way. So you had that issue, I think, going on as well, in the sense that Thurman has probably been really ready to retire for a good 5 years. So that, coupled with asset outflows, creates a situation, kind of a perfect storm. And now this was pre-COVID, so you didn't know that we were going to go into this situation. I do know that, Mona Williams left, which was, she was a significant member of the Progress team. Unfortunately, we weren't made aware of it until it all sort of mushroomed over and they were moving out. So, that is fact, coupled with a bit of speculation, having been in the business as long as I have, to get a real grasp on the fact that they have moved out of it. I would also add that for managers, there's been a lot of consolidation. And so what you'll see with the two managers that you're looking at is that even they, in their organizational structures, have had consolidation. So Addicts acquired New Prospect, and then it's not FIS anymore, Exponents, getting used to their new words. So formerly known as FIS, but they are now, as of April 1, have a new name, Exponents. They acquired Piedmont. And so they're actually a current manager for you, because Piedmont is a fixed income manager for St. Louis. So a lot of consolidation is also challenging, because you have firms that are becoming bigger, and if you're not partnering, becomes a bit of a challenge as well. So those are the components that I think led to the wind down. If you have the document, I think the things that you really want to focus in on, there are a couple things. When you look at the terms, one of the things you'll notice, and they'll have more updated performance. So I think high level, what you want to just take away is that it has been a difficult market. The last, COVID, right? This whole period has really skewed returns and where they're going to be. So that's something to keep in mind. And that's with anybody. The best performing manager in the world is going to have a bit of skewed returns for the last several months. Also, I do think it is important to note that Exponents has been running this product. I mean, by running, they actually have clients that are in the product, and Addicts has been running what we call a paper portfolio. So what does that mean? That means that they look and determine, okay, if I had clients in a global mandate, what managers would we be utilizing? and then they calculate that performance and it becomes what we call a paper portfolio. But they haven't actually run assets in it. So that is something that you may wonder about. And we can talk a little bit further about that, but I did want to highlight that because that may be, and it actually might be in the questions, but if it's not, that may be another question that you may want to ask as we go through these presentations. Because there is a little bit to be said about a firm that's actually running versus doesn't mean that the firm that has a paper portfolio cannot do a really good job, but it is sort of a live track record versus what we call a simulated track record.
Excuse me for one moment. If you leave the meeting and come back in, I may not know that because the waiting room is turned on. So, and there are 5 other people waiting in there, and it's hard to read it. So Donna, I did finally get your email, so I was able to let you in. I was wondering where you were, so just wanted to point that out.
The screen froze on me and kind of kicked me out.
Got it. No, and it's not a problem. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
So with that in mind, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, which one was the paper product, did you say?
Addicts.
Okay, thank you.
They're the first ones that are going to present. Now they have a lot of assets and a lot of experience in many of the other asset classes. So it's just this particular strategy. So I don't, I'm just sharing that with you as a point of note. It doesn't mean that they aren't able to handle it, because remember, they're not running the assets themselves. They're selecting underlying managers that have been doing this for, for varying time periods, but, have been doing it, and they're pulling those managers together. So it's more of the optimization process that they're responsibility for, as well as for some of these managers who might be a little bit smaller, maybe not institutional ready in the sense of reporting. You find these managers, they're portfolio managers, and they know their stocks, but when it comes time to dealing with an institutional client, being able to provide the reporting that's needed, the meetings, and all the kind of what I'm going to call back office stuff, oftentimes they need a little bit of help on that. Or they may not have a marketer who's going out to help them acquire assets. So there's other things outside of just that pure investment piece that has to be taken into consideration. That is really one of the roles that a manager provides is guidance and education to the managers on how to be able to interact and responsive, I should say, to a institutional client such as yourself. But you can only imagine coming out the gate, a client like St. Louis Public Schools is not going to want to deal with a manager that doesn't have that experience, because we don't have time to be babysitting, right? We want the performance, we want the reporting, we want all the things that are required of an institutional investor. We want that already packaged for us. So that's another role. So I think that's high level, a summary of the 2 managers. I will be happy to, as we go through this presentation, I'll be asking questions as well as you will be asking questions. And then maybe at the end of this, we can touch base on, sort of thoughts.
Okay. Are there any other concerns before we go into the first interview? Christina, do you have, you're muted.
No, I think I'm good. I wanted just a clarification. So, Kristen, on addicts, they have managers that can, in their portfolio, that can fulfill this mandate, correct? They just don't have a current mandate.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say that either they have managers that are already on their roster, or they've done a deep dive on managers. It may be that they need to pull some managers that they've done research on. I mean, again, for the manager, it's always a rotation of a stable of managers that they have done significant research on. So I have no doubt that they have managers that they can pull immediately into a portfolio should they get a mandate.
Okay, thank you.
You guys ready for me to admit addicts in?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to do this in order. Where's Les?
Okay.
Les, and then
no.
All right.
So you all are going to have right around 25 minutes or so to present. Please let us know, but we will likely be asking questions as you present, and then there'll be a bit of time afterwards should any of the trustees have any questions at that point.
I'm putting up the
Good. Great.
so you guys will have to, when you start talking, you'll have to tell me what page you want me to go to.
Okay, Pat, are you on?
I am on. I have a neighbor doing some lawn work, so I'll be on mute unless I'm talking.
Okay. All right. Marilyn, are you there?
I am.
Okay, good. All right. Well, good afternoon. I hope you are all well and safe and getting through this very difficult time that we are all experiencing. And we want to thank you for the opportunity to present to you our firm, Addicts Asset Management. You'll see behind me the St. Louis Arch, and I put it up. I feel like I'm on KSDK. I am a native St. Louisan. I was born at Homer G. Phillips Hospital and went to St. Louis Public Schools. I went to the Benton School. And my mother is a graduate of Sumner High School and the first Black graduate of St. Louis University. So I have very deep connections to the St. Louis community. And it is indeed an honor to have the opportunity to present to you today. My first investment management company was started in 1996. And actually it started, my first client was the city of St. Louis. From that $100 million mandate from the city of St. Louis, I've grown this firm over the last 25 years to $3 billion. It was a lot more a few weeks ago, but that's where we are today. But in any case, I'm going to start on page one. Well, page four, actually, if we could turn to page four. So one of the things that I learned very early on is that in the world of investment management, there are not a lot of Black money management firms. In fact, of the $70 trillion of institutional assets in the world, Black money management firms only manage 1%, a little more than 1% of those assets. So even though we know that diverse firms perform better, are more creative, better at solving problems, we do know that in investment management, it is decidedly uniform when it comes to race and gender. It's mostly white and mostly male, and it goes well beyond racism or sexism in the sense that how did this happen? But that gives us a purpose. Addicts is in the business of helping create opportunities for minority and women-owned firms, as well as smaller firms, smaller and newer firms. Our purpose is at the very core of our business. What we want to do is provide a competitive return on investment, but we also want to include what we call the diversity dividend. We want to help stakeholders, pension fund investors like yourselves promote and develop diversity and inclusion, but we also want to help you meet your fiduciary responsibilities. Addicts has been working with emerging managers since 2001. There are very few things that we don't understand about this space or that we haven't experienced. It's a very valuable, we have a very valuable experience in this space, and we've been able to help our clients find managers and work with smaller managers. I think we give very good advice. I think there's no substitute really for experience in this space. So what we've developed over that period of time is what I like to call social capital. We are very trusted stewards of these opportunities, and we have helped build a lot of very small, new minority and women-owned firms over the 20 years that we've been in business. The strength of our team really is the rock solid stability that we have in our firm. One of the things that's most, I guess, in terms of news about our firm or about what's happened with our firm is on January 2nd, After 2 years of negotiations and trying to decide if it was really the best thing for us to do, we acquired Capital Prospects. Marilyn Freeman, who joins me on this call today, was the founder of Capital Prospects. Her and Elizabeth Nope started their firm in 2002. And what we decided to do was to combine our two firms because we felt that it gave us, first of all, it doubled down on our commitment to the manager of manager space, which is all that we do. And we feel that both firms together makes us much stronger going forward. And I'm so glad that we did this, particularly in light of two things. One, Progress Investment Trust closed their doors. And then now we find ourselves in a very volatile market with the downturn. What we want to do is we want to try to redefine the playing field. We want to reshape the value proposition in this space. We understand the kinds of pressure that trustees like yourselves operate under in terms of returns and about the scrutiny paid to the fees that are paid to managers. And so we want to help in that regard. We also want to make it easy for you to invest with smaller, newer firms and minority firms. And we do that by trying to build that bridge from creating those opportunities and your institutional investment responsibility. We have both firms have an excellent reputation in this industry. Both of us still have our first clients. The Chicago Teachers Pension Fund has been a client of Addix Asset Management since 2004, and they still are to this day. Just in similar fashion, Capital Prospects has their first client, the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut's Horizon Fund was an initial investor in Capital Prospects. So I think that really speaks to a lot of the experience of our firm and the great reputations that we have. As I said, the most important organizational update for us is the merger of the two firms, but this is a very healthy combined organization. We are helping to create enterprise value by undertaking this transaction, but we also are doing something complementary in terms of product offerings. It helps Addix expand its product offerings, especially into the asset categories of fixed income and small cap. And so when you look at our organization, what you see is something, a very diverse team, a very deep team. And one of the
pause you there for a
most
second,
proud
Les.
of about,
Page 6, please.
page 5. I'm sorry. Page 6. You're right. What you'll see is our investment team. And I want to point out the fact that Addix is on the Addix side, most of the people that have been there for a long time. The average time that people have been at Addix is 8.5 years. So we don't really lose people. I built a really great team, and through thick and thin, we've stayed together. We've supported each other, and we've been able to continue to do well in our space. And by bringing over the team from Capital Prospects, I just think that makes us a much stronger team and even better. If you turn again to the next page, these are our competitive advantages. And I'm going to let Marilyn take it over from here so you can hear her talk about the firm and what we're doing.
Thanks, Les. And thank you to everybody for inviting us to talk to you today. We really appreciate it. And the technology you've put together so that we can do it during this time. Les is right. We had a long courtship of a couple of years of getting to know one another very well, including our staffs getting to know one another very well. They are now working together in a very strong fashion. It was important to us that the culture of the firms mesh. That's a key determining factor, and the approach to the business at hand. So the competitive advantages as we see them, it's a collaborative environment on both sides of this equation. When we came together, our approaches were very much aligned. The team is very experienced, as Les mentions, and we have different backgrounds and skill sets, but in fact are working very, very well together as a team. We're very much convicted in our due diligence process. We spend a lot of time understanding one another's due diligence processes. So we think that the combination is very additive for putting the two of us together. Our job is vetting investment talent and determining that there's an adequate infrastructure together to support what the managers do. So the due diligence process is critical. It leads to our judgments that we have in making decisions relative to the use of investment managers. So as we've gotten to know each other, we have picked up on the similarities that we have in that respect. We also have both been first funders in new firms and new products over our long histories. And we have what we call a strong knowledge base of the universe of emerging managers. We consider ourselves partners with our clients and the managers. I think that has led to the reputations that Les says that we enjoy today. Client service is very, very important. We function as an extension of staff for our clients. And then relative to the managers, we may get a chance to talk about this if we don't run out of time later, but we really approach our managers as partners and feel that having an equitable philosophy around fee structures is important, that there would be a fair treatment of all parties, and we may get to that later. So the goal is really to provide solutions for our clients while fostering growth and success of the managers. And it is our sole focus of the business. If you flip over to page 8, please, is a snapshot of our assets under management at the end of March, which is we all know, was a very extreme market environment. But what you'll see is that we have about 2.9 billion in AUM at the end of March. That has changed, of course, in April for the better. And you'll see that we really had a merger of two firms that were about of the same size. And that the combination being 2.9 billion. 13 clients, we had one client in common at the point of the merger. And as an update, we have a new account that's been awarded to us effective May 1st, which will now make the count 14 clients. Two of Capital Prospects clients had 2 mandates, each distinct mandates. So we have a bit more mandates than we do clients. And the team numbers 13, which we think is a deeper number for both of us. At the bottom, you'll see locations, certifications, and insurance coverage details on the firm. Over to page 9 quickly. That 2.9 billion or thereabouts is broken down by strategies that we cover and have funded today. There was a synergy in the combination in that we had a broadening of strategies, ADX bringing its expertise in global, international, and customized best in class, and Capital Prospects bringing dedicated small cap, SMID, small value, and best ideas fixed income. So the business itself is very diversified, as you see in the schematic. Mm-hmm. And with that, I'll hand it over to Pat.
Thank you. Turning to page 10, over the next few pages, I'm going to give you an overview of our investment philosophy and process. Please ask questions as we go along as they come up. Page 10 really establishes why are we investing in the emerging manager space. For us, it's threefold. Number one, we believe smaller, entrepreneurial and diverse firms have a leg up on the competition. For smaller firms, they have the benefit of nimbleness. They're able to get in and out of issues with less impact on price. For entrepreneurial firms, I call it the entrepreneurial factor. That's best expressed in an old adage: you take better care of things that you own versus things that you rent, and all of our managers own. And then finally, diversification. ADX strongly believes in the diversification premium. And what that means is there's several studies out there, the most well-known one by Harvard Business Review, that shows that investing with diverse firms helps improve outcomes. And for ADX, the proof is in our history. Over the history of the entire firm, approximately half of our clients' assets had a mandate to diverse firms. However, our actual investments were 90% with diverse firms. So that 40% overweight to diverse firms relative to what our clients required of us shows our dedication to the space. It's in the DNA of addicts, and as Les talked at the top, it's one of the reasons why this firm is formed, and we're very proud to be a part of it. On the right-hand side of page 10, we have several both qualitative and quantitative tools to help in our investment process, but everything comes in line to meet our three main goals: excess return, risk management, and diversification. Now, before I go into our investment process, I'm going to give you a very high-level overview of what we do, plus an example of a global equity best-in-class portfolio we recently built. I just want to pause and talk a little bit about manager research. Marilyn hinted about this, but I just want to put it out there again because that is why firms like ours exist. It's why you hire us. The most important aspect of a manager of emerging manager is manager research, selection, and discovery. You cannot do this using quantitative tools and scanning databases because of lack of history, new firms entering the industry, and quite frankly, a number of firms who are new to the industry not understanding they have to put their performance and their track records onto databases. You have to take a qualitative approach. And as both Les and Marilyn talked about, the thing we're proudest of here at Addicts is our investment team. The team has remained at Addicts for an average of 8.5 years, but many team members have industry experience exceeding 30 and in some cases 40 years. We draw on that experience when measuring and reviewing our underlying managers. Turning to the next page, our 7-step investment process can be neatly divided into 3 segments. We apply this process to build customized portfolios for all of our clients. And in the first segment, investment policy, we seek to understand what you're looking for. And in building a portfolio for you, which we do have a sample portfolio we built, we'd like to address this step for you. And that really is understanding your goals in general. What is the definition of a diverse manager? We believe we understand what it is, but we always like to check. What benchmark are you looking for? Are there any restrictions in the account that we should be aware of? And one of the most important ones is when you're looking at the goals you're putting together for our overall portfolio, what is the goal for the emerging manager portfolio? Is it graduation? Does it fit into that level? Are you looking for firms to be graduated out of the program to the overall plan? When you're dealing with global equity, that's one of the things we always want to talk with clients about, because oftentimes in global equity portfolios, the idea sounds great, but graduation becomes very lacking. So once we understand what the client is looking for, both from an investment and a characteristics perspective, using that investment policy step, we go to portfolio structure. I'll show you a deeper example of this in a few pages, but essentially what we do is we take our manager research, both the current and historical research, we combine that with screening the manager universe to ensure we're not missing any new strategies out there. And then we meet as a team to make sure we're not missing any strategies that aren't on the databases. And believe me, there are a number of strategies out there that are great potential, but you won't find them under those traditional routes. And so it all comes together in an iterative process that is really conviction based. So our highest conviction managers are in portfolio, but also under a risk control aspect, in that we build around those high conviction managers to ensure that the overall portfolio doesn't take on too much risk. And then finally, portfolio monitoring, the last step of our process, that encompasses both compliance review. We want to make sure that we're fiduciaries for our client, and guideline compliance and contract compliance are a big part of what we do. In addition, client servicing, a lot of us have a consulting background, and client service is a key part to this industry. We're trying to break ground here, and you can't do that without communication. So ongoing monitoring is a key part to that process. Finally, we do not build portfolios and sit on our hands. We're patient, long-term investors, but we do not hesitate to make a manager change if we deem it necessary. And some of the reasons for this is if there's a change in personnel, if there is a change in the overall firm, or if the investment process, we lost faith in its ability to add value over the longer term. And that is established through careful analysis to see if the characteristics they target over the longer term have been trailing in the marketplace. Then it would make sense they underperform. If they weren't, it doesn't, then we have to have a deeper conversation and perhaps make a change. Moving on to page 16. This is an example of a recent global equity best-in-class build we did. Now, unlike your portfolio, it wasn't built to the MSCI ACWI or MSCI World Index. It's not a true global portfolio, but it's a global portfolio in nature because it hits all the parts of the global equity marketplace. But in conjunction with the client and the consultant, we overweighted the less efficient areas of the marketplace, small cap equity, emerging markets equity, and international equity, and underweighted large cap equity. We still have a small portion of large cap equity within this portfolio, but at extreme underweight. And again, we came to this allocation not because of a top-down bias by addicts, but creating a customized portfolio in conjunction with the client and their consultant. And this has several advantages, including graduation opportunities. Again, at the top, that's one of the things we would like to talk to you when creating a finalized portfolio for you. So to take you through how our portfolios are built and how we use all this qualitative research in our team to build the portfolios for all of our clients, look at the chart on the bottom. So each stage represents a meeting of the investment team. This meeting takes anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, depending on how many managers we're considering. And each build takes multiple stages. The number of stages really depends on asset classes, number of candidates, and other factors as well. So starting on stage 1, like I talked about on the investment process side, we sit down with all of our research, both current and historical, we screen the universe, and then the entire team sits in the room to discuss who we should consider for this mandate. We have all the information at our hand, and in this example, we narrowed it down to 34 different strategies to consider for this client. We move to stage 2, and this is the conviction-based aspect of our process, is we start out with our highest conviction strategies. We want the managers we think the best of to be in our client portfolios. And whether it's a benchmark-driven portfolio like yours or a best-in-class portfolio like this, that is our starting point. And so stage 2, through conversations with the entire investment team, where it gets stress tested by different opinions across the team and devil's advocacy, we come up with those high conviction managers. And in stage 2, for this example, 3 of the 8 final managers were considered. Through stages 3 and 4, and there could be more, there could be less, that's where we round out the portfolio using those high conviction managers as a base to, again, minimize any top-down risk of the overall portfolio. You're not hiring us to be economists to, target a area of the marketplace independent of the managers. You're hiring us to find high-quality managers for you to use both within our portfolio and hopefully to graduate if that's one of your goals.
Hey, Patrick.
Go ahead.
This is Christina. You're at 22 minutes. I just want to let you know.
Okay. And so the final stage is we really look at the allocation and we refine it. In summary, when building portfolios, we feel that you have to take a qualitative aspect to it because of the lack of data and information. You have to have the resources on your investment team in order to do that. Addicts not only had the investment team prior to our merger with Capital Prospects, but we doubled down on the space. This is our bread and butter. This is our focus of our firm and why we feel we are well positioned in the industry. With that, I'll turn it over to Marilyn to talk about our fees.
Okay, so I'll try to wrap up quickly here on page 19, if we could go there, please. We think this is important to share with you, mainly because different firms have different approaches to this. And we feel strongly about our philosophy, which is the approach on fees is and has always been to be fair to all parties, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. We strongly negotiate fees with our managers on behalf of our clients, but we think that at this point in the emerging managers firm's development, they should be treated fairly so that the fees make economic sense to all parties of the transaction. We don't believe in disadvantaging our clients in any way, our managers or ourselves, since we all have businesses to run. Our relationships are key. And I think, as we said earlier, that's how we've built these reputations that we have. So this fairness principle, we think, has directly led to our reputation that we enjoy in the marketplace. We just think that's important to share with you. It is not always the case as we understand it. So I guess I would say we hope you get a sense of our commitment to this space. It is our sole focus and our sole business. The rest of this book, there are 2 appendices, one of which has more detail on the investment process and our biographies of everybody on the team. So Les, would you like to just wrap up?
Sure. I'd just like to go back and highlight 3 or 4 of the things that I think are really important about addicts. I think it's very important that we actually eat our own cooking. Like when we're talking to managers, we're looking for managers that look like us. We're collaborative, we're stable, we're diverse. Um, we have a very high touch approach with our managers because we want them to be successful. We've constructed a database that's built on 20 years of doing meetings with minority money managers. Um, and again, we want to create economic and social value in these programs because we want you to be successful. So we'll take any questions that you have at this point.
Christina, you have anything? Can't you hear me?
Yes, I can. Let me go to my questions here. First, does anybody else have any questions for addicts that they did not cover in their presentation?
Christina, if I could ask your permission, this is Andrew.
Go ahead, Andrew.
The fee structure will be discussed in closed session.
Correct.
But I just wanted to ask you guys, it's a 3-tier approach. Would you be willing to do the flat middle? The middle of the tier, just flat?
I don't think that would be possible given the current structure.
Okay.
We could do a flat fee, but it'll be higher than the middle tier. We'd have to go back to, I'm guessing it'd probably be around 60.
Okay. Can we bank on that right now, or do you need to look at it?
We could commit to 60.
Yeah, we could commit to that.
Okay, thank you. That's my question, Christina.
Anybody else have any questions that were not discussed? And sorry, I stepped away for a second, so forgive me because my doorbell rang and no one seems to be able to answer the doorbell or the phone in this house. So Les and can you talk about where we are? The reason why we're back to this mandate is given the situation with Progress and their unwinding of their or their firm related to, in my perspective, loss of clients, especially the whole change of the California structure. But and then as well as management succession planning. I read the overall structure, but who owns addicts and what steps do you have in place for key man risk with yourself, Les?
Sure. A great question. So I own 100% of the voting common stock of Addicts Asset Management. What I did was to create a second sleeve of ownership called profits interest. And I did that because the awarding of those profits interests to the longtime senior management team at Addicts did not result in a taxable event. So there are 13% of the profits of the company are set aside for the senior management of the company. And it goes, right now it's just with the Addicts employees, but it will be expanded to include the senior management employees from Capital Prospects once we get a chance to turn our attention to it. We have a very detailed succession plan with respect to and there's 2 parts to the succession plan. The first one is that catastrophic event, which is if something happens to me. So my ownership interest is held in a trust. It's held in a Les Bond personal trust. And so it doesn't pass through, it doesn't pass through an estate. It turns over to the successor trustee. The successor trustee is Vinnie Lyons. Vinnie Lyons is my first cousin. His father went to Beaumont High School. So I've known him since he was a baby. And so he would take over the Les Bond personal trust. And there are 2 insurance policies totaling in aggregate $8 million that would pay into the Les Bond personal trust to do a few things. But first and most importantly is to make sure that Addicts has capital to go forward. and to be able to do whatever is necessary for addicts to continue to be an ongoing concern. The other part of succession planning doesn't have to do with the catastrophic part, and that is just me at 63 years old, having a plan to turn over management of the company to the next generation of leaders at Addicts. And we are in the process of doing that right now. My time horizon is somewhere between 5 and 8 years. And I wouldn't necessarily step all the way out of the business, but I would definitely begin to step aside to allow the people that have been working at Addicts, like I said, the average time that people have been at Addicts is 8.5 years, is to turn it over to that leadership, that next generation of leadership to go forward.
One addition, Vinnie Lyons has been working at Addicts for over 14 years and is the current managing director as well, in case that wasn't clear.
I have a question. Reports say that Addicts does not have a current mandate. Clients seeking global entities. Have you ever had a mandate? And please explain. Les?
I'm going to let Pat tackle that one.
Okay.
So we do not currently have a benchmark-driven global mandate. We do have multiple best-in-class global mandates. Like I talked about earlier, the differences between the two is the best-in-class ones concentrate on areas that the client is looking for. So we have research exposure across the global equity spectrum. We currently invest in every area of the global equity market, but we're not doing it in a benchmark-driven way at this time. And quite frankly, there are not a lot of portfolio opportunities out there for global equity strategies in the manager space at this time. It's something we always talk to clients about, but not a lot have moved that way because they don't go global equity in their base portfolio typically. And that usually is the hiccup.
And one other question, how many new clients did you attain in 2019 and how many did you lose and for what reason?
In 2019, we gained additional assets and we onboarded Muni. I don't think we gained, our client gains was in November of 2018. No changes in 2019 gains or losses. And then in 2020, so far, we have not only gained the Capital Prospect clients through the combination, but we, as Marilyn alluded to, just won a new client here in Chicago for $150 million, also in a best-in-class global equity mandate.
And Mr. Cross, I'd like to go back to your question about a global mandate. We competed for this business the last time
Yes.
for a global mandate, and that same question came up. But I think it doesn't. Yes, do we have a live performance track record for a global mandate? No, we don't. Have we worked with every one of the managers that you have in the existing portfolio that you have of a global mandate? We worked with every one of them in our best-in-class global portfolios.
Okay. All right then. Are there any other questions?
I have no other questions.
Kristen? Is she muted?
No, yes, I am muted. I apologize. I don't have any other questions aside. I do have a question. If you were selected, what would be the process of how would this, transition?
Sure. We actually just went through one with the one we just took over. It was a former Progress client, and we know the time stretch you're under. So what we would suggest is that we take over the existing portfolio, sit down with you and do our investment process to answer that graduation question. And then in 1 to 3 months, put the new portfolio in place. So you'll get fiduciary duty in your existing portfolio. You'll get continuation of your investments with diverse firms, and you get a more thoughtful approach to reallocating.
And then since you did just take over another, I assume it was a global mandate. Okay. How much of don't have to go through names, but just curious, how much of a change or difference? Because I know there's a limited amount of managers in this universe. So was there a lot of overlap onto what you're currently doing?
That portfolio, and I'm going off memory here, We just took it over, so it's still the existing portfolio. We're in the process of redoing it. The new portfolio, which we already discussed with the client, will have a commonality of 3 out of 9 managers.
Oh,
And so the other 6 is switching it around. Progress in this portfolio, it's not as concentrated as yours. I don't know why they did it, but they put a lot of managers in the same sleeve for reasons I still don't know.
I got it. Okay.
Can I ask a question? So we have 5 underlying managers. You're familiar with all of them. Do you anticipate any of them remaining in the portfolio?
I believe it depends on the specific strategy.
I mean, in general, 1, 2, maybe.
In general, we think highly of all 5 managers, and we actually have assets with all 5 of them: Arga, Ativo, Brown, every single one of them. I would imagine Arga and Brown would probably be on the front end to staying in the portfolio, but we consider all the others as well. Because we'll take into account transaction costs. If we make a manager change, you want to make sure it's worthwhile, because you do take on transaction costs with the manager change.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, Andrew, you can close it out, or Christina, I'm sorry, and Andrew.
Okay, at this point, I guess you guys, I don't think we're going to have any questions again to call you back in. So if you would, I would prefer you just to leave the meeting. And thank you very much for spending your time with us today. We appreciate it.
And thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Les. All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
There's Les still here. Okay.
Do you have any questions for me before we move on to the next manager?
Christian, I just have one concern going forward. As these companies fold up, is there any alarm system in the industry to know ahead of time? Because it seems like most of these are abrupt drops and we don't know anything about it until it happens. That's been the common response. Is there any way that we can, going forward, know ahead of time that this might be an occurrence?
Sure. So you are right. The last 2, I mean, I will tell you the Progress one was extraordinarily abrupt. I would say that was an anomaly. I had not seen that kind of sort of closing before. And you have had another manager, Holland Capital, that did close, but that was much longer and more organized process. And so we found out about it. They really worked with us for a much longer period of time. And they really sat down and talked about the CEO, the lead portfolio manager, CEO Monica Williams, came in and really kind of talked through the process as to why they were closing down. So it didn't feel like this shut the door, if you will, that we experienced with Progress. But then we, of course, had the Chicago equity. I think that the COVID has increased the vulnerability of firms that may not have already been doing well, and so, or had some challenges. And what we're doing on our side is now any manager that, while their investment process may still be intact, we think that their performance is either good or where it's expected, because managers don't always do well, but it may be expected and we're comfortable with that. If we have seen a significant asset outflow, we are now taking that extra step. I have a manager right now going through a due diligence process. They're not really, shouldn't be doing it, but because of exactly what you're talking about, we're trying to make sure we get in front of it, because we don't like to see these unexpected types of situations. So I think what we're doing is, as we see significant outflows, we are tracking that. And we're more proactive, given the environment that we're in presently, to ensure that we have the information, that we put a hold on the manager if we think that there could be a concern, just a going concern issue, which is separate than an actual investment issue.
Okay.
And also, Kristen, we have this issue with Entrust and Permal when they closed shop and they were combining, acquisitions, and that one took a lot longer. They came in front of us and they talked about it, and we ended up combining the two, staying with them while they combined, and then we ended up letting them go out of the hedge fund space.
Right,
And then
right.
if you
And
recall- you're right.
yeah, and actually, interest is still around, but we
Right.
made a different decision because of, you know, what we were looking to do with the portfolio. And so that is why we actually ended up getting out. But to your point, it is much more customary to have a longer process of discussing what's going on once it can be made public. So again,
Right.
definitely surprising. Appreciate your comment. And hopefully I've shared with you what we're doing at NEPC to ensure that we at least get in front of it. Because nobody likes to get a call at on a Friday, Thursday night or a Friday night, so when we're shutting down. So definitely want to try to head that off, just so we can also be prepared from a portfolio standpoint to shift. So I'll leave it there.
And then we also, I mean, this is like Kristen said, it's really rare that this happened. But when we had PIMCO as our fixed income provider, they had their key portfolio manager left. Now it hit the paper, and that's how we knew. But we put them on watch lists when we knew that clients were leaving PIMCO, and it was a going concern because they didn't know if they would have somebody that would be able to replace the same strategy and to continue. So, I mean, this is not common. We're just in different times right now, and so we really need to make sure that we keep that manager watch list and maybe change it a little bit to really track outflows and structural changes. With Chicago Equity, we should have known that they lost 50% of their assets under management as a going concern for us, but they didn't notify us. So that's my biggest issue is as firms are so consolidated into one person, that's our biggest risk, I think, going forward.
And I think to your point, because we were, the researchers at my firm were really shocked also about Chicago Equity, and what we have been able to surmise is that their consultant relations people, because it was a pretty big firm who typically reach out to the consulting firms and make sure all the research people know what's going on. They had terminated them basically. And so you had the president of the firm who probably did the best they could to reach out to everybody, but that process was a little bit lacking. So so basically I told my firm that our researchers, and the researchers, usually the researchers are the first to get the call, not the field consultants, but neither here nor there. We're definitely putting in some policies and procedures to try to, or they're already in place, but just try to expedite anyone that might even be what I would say on the cusp, not really a concern, but now we're saying, you know what, because of the way the market is and because of the pressure that organizations have, something that would have historically been just, okay, we're going to watch it, not really a concern. We're actually acting as if all of those could be a real situation because how fast this market is running.
This is Darnetta. Could I speak?
Yes, go ahead, Darnetta.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, should we have some, like we're interviewing now, should we have some touch base with the managers on some frequency where we can ask some hard questions of what's happening with the portfolio?
I think that's an excellent idea, and that's part of what we'll channel into Andrew and Christina and make sure that happens along with Kristen, and make sure that we can periodically do that.
Okay, good, thanks.
Darnetta, what I've spoken to Kristen about is potentially not so much having a public forum meeting with managers, but having some type of educational meeting where if we are going to talk about asset allocation or something, we have a manager in, let's say, small cap or something that we don't really know, that they come in and they do a webinar for us. They don't have to come in person, but be able to do a webinar so that our trustees get an understanding of the different asset classes and then how it goes into our entire portfolio and how it comes together. So Doris,
as well as how they're managed.
Yeah, a long time ago, Doris used to bring in a manager and they used to, tell us how they were doing. They always wanted to tell us how great they were doing. They always wanted to say, give me more money. But we really were focused on meeting them and having them educate us in their specific space.
Good.
So we've talked to Kristen about this and there's more to come.
Okay, great. Thank you.
At this point, do you guys want to call in addicts?
Yes,
Excuse me,
Exponents.
Excellent.
exponent.
I'm going to admit them at the same time, so they're going to come in, okay?
Okay, dope.
Okay.
Oh, I better sit up. Slouching here. I'm not in my living room. There we are.
Hello?
Okay,
Hello.
hello,
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon.
hello.
Hi, thank you so much, Tina and Keela, for waiting. We went a little bit over, but we were trying to clarify some questions and ask Kristen some questions on the interim so that we wouldn't get commingled in the different presentations. We cleared up what we
No
had.
worries.
Of course, yeah, not a problem at all.
And so at this point, Tina or Keela, you can take over. And Andrew will put your presentation on the screen, the shared screen.
Actually, Christina Keela's gonna run her own presentation.
Oh, great. Okay,
If she can't do it, I'll do it, but I think she can.
no
Okay,
problem.
Okay.
So I think, Kristen, how much time did we say? I'm gonna put the timer on and then remind you so that we don't go over.
Yeah, so you have right about 25 minutes. The trustees may ask questions as you're going through the presentation, and then we'll have a few questions at the end of the presentation.
Okay,
Okay, that's great. Andrew, when I tried to share my screen, it says that it's disabled by the host.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Okay.
Try it now, see if you can.
Okay.
Not up.
Yeah. Yes. So here we go. Share that. Okay, and now hopefully everyone can see what I see.
yes.
PowerPoint presentation. Okay,
I
well,
see it.
Perfect.
okay, I'm going to take it into full screen. I think that will show up even better. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. It's so good to see everybody looking well in this current difficult time. We're the team with Exponents. Presenting today are, along with myself, is Tina Biles Williams, who's the founder of our company, as well as the CEO and the Chief Investment Officer. And Exponent is one of the few firms in the business that is founded and by an African-American woman, and we are 100% employee owned. And so I'm going to talk today about why we're going to talk today about why we think that we would be a wonderful provider for you for your manager of investment managers portfolio. Exponents is the results of the combination of FIS Group. You all might know us by that name. Some of you, we presented to the board in 2015 for this mandate, and we're very honored to be asked to present to you again. So it's the combination of FIS Group and Piedmont Investment Advisors. And Piedmont was and is now through Exponents, one of your fixed income managers. And so we want to just thank you for allowing us to provide that service to you. The word Exponents is derived from exponent. And that's because we see ourselves as engaging with you at a higher level of partnership with you and with all of our clients. And so even though we've changed our name as of April 1st of this year, our mission remains the same: to enhance the wealth of our clients, our employees, and the communities in which we operate, and our values remain the same as well. Now, Tina started Exponents in 1996 here in Philadelphia, where we are based. Prior to starting the company, Tina worked in the investment industry first as an investment officer with a lot of public funds that are here in Philly. And she worked her way up to being the chief investment officer of the city of Philadelphia. She's also been a general investment consultant. She's been a trustee, so she's sat on your side of the table. She was a trustee for the Pennsylvania Public School Teachers Retirement System for a number of years. So she understands the perspective of what you guys are looking for when you're thinking about risk and thinking about the returns that you need to generate for your portfolio. We're a very entrepreneurial firm. She started the company by taking a second mortgage out on her house when she was a single mom in '96. So we know what it takes to build a firm that's going to last and going to grow. I want to just switch over to talking about our assets under management. At the end of a very tumultuous first quarter, we managed about $8.6 billion in total. And if I can direct you to the chart there, the active global equity slice of that donut was about $3.6 billion at the end of the first quarter. And that represents our manager of emerging managers platform. We also have a systematic global equities platform and a fixed income platform. And looking at active global equities, if you drill down a little further, our global equity strategy was just under $1 billion at the end of the first quarter. And again, but please ask any questions as we go along here. Page 7 just gives you a different representation of our products. So you can again see circled there the global equity strategy, which is kind of midway or midpoint between the passive products that we offer and the more active products that we offer. Page 8 displays our performance. And so you can see for the calendar years, as well as the since inception period, all of our, and I'm going to just be out front about this, all of our products outperformed their benchmarks on a since inception basis, except one, and that's the global equity strategy. And if you look at the calendar year performance, what was really tough for us was the 2018 calendar year. This is a product that we started managing in 2008. And in over 11 years of managing this product, that was the worst year on record. And I'll tell you why. We were transitioning that portfolio in 2008, making some structural changes. And through the process of that transition, we had a significant underweight to the US market. And as you all know, that was not a great thing to do in 2008. And so that had some impact on us in the negative direction. But you can also see that we rebounded in 2019 and we actually outperformed the benchmark last year. And so we continue to work through that. But I wanted to address that out front. And if there are any questions there, we're happy to answer them. All right, then I'm going to keep on going. This is the Exponence management team. So, diversity, we get asked that a lot about, what are your views on diversity? It's just who we are. It's who we've always been. And so these are the leaders of our firm. These are essentially the members of our management committee. And so you can see we have team leaders from the investment side, which Tina runs, and then team leaders from the business operations side, which Mac Williams, our president and COO, runs. This is a highly experienced team. We've worked together really well since the acquisition of Piedmont in 2018. We enjoy working with each other, and we think our diversity is a strength. Next are the investment teams. And so more relevant for this conversation is the active global equities team. There are 8 team members pictured here. And then we also have 2 investment operational professionals that kind of round out this team. And of course, just want to again extend our appreciation because you also have our fixed income team working for you. And Tina's been in this business a long time. She's seen a lot of things. And so she's going to talk about how we do what we do and what we can offer to you. Really quickly on ownership, and I'm actually going to pass this to Tina because I think it's more appropriate, but we wanted to address, again, proactively the issue of succession and business continuity.
So let me just echo that Keela's words, that we're really honored to have the opportunity to present to you. First thing is we are employee owned, but importantly, our equity is distributed to everyone who has worked with us for over a year. The vehicles through which we do that is Employee Stock Ownership Plan, or ESOP, which owns 32% of the company. We think it's important because this structure builds accountability and alignment between our employees' personal success and our clients and the firm. Additionally, the ESOP provides a seamless way to transfer shares from the major shareholder, which is myself in this case, over time as I get closer to, you know, a less active role, not in the immediate future, but in 10, 15 years or so. What the structure thereby supports is business continuity by obviating the need to get a third party or outside investor to pay the founder for its shares. So this is a really important part of our culture. There are no questions.
Can I interrupt really quick? So one of the questions is, what happens in the event of a catastrophic event for you? What happens to the firm? You know, we see the transfer maybe over time, but what, I mean, given that, you know, whether you decide that this isn't what you want to do or the catastrophic event, how does this change, or how does it impact the firm going forward?
Great question. And it's a question that before, you know, we went to, as the pandemic became sort of more evident, it's something that we brushed off. So if you go back to the slide, 2 slides before that, Keela, so you can see our structure. So the obvious thing is I have 2 hats, right? And so if you take my CEO hat, then the obvious change, the obvious kind of recipient of the CEO position is Mac Williams, who is the president and chief operating officer. If he is taken out, then one below him, the chief technology officer, would you know, perform that role. On the investment side, there are 2 people, you know, Tom Quinn on the manager of managers side, he works really closely with me. And then, you know, obviously, you know, Piedmont had a band together before we acquired them. So you have Isaac, Charles, and Somali are the leaders of their platform. Does that answer your question?
Christine, you're muted.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Next one. Great. So these are some interesting times. But for the investment management industry, we had interesting times before COVID-19. Anyone, if you look at sort of the trend lines for the investment industry, you know, there were some well-documented headwinds facing active managers that prompted some to close and some to consolidate. And then in the COVID-19 era, those pressures have unfortunately intensified. So for allocators such as yourself, I believe evaluating the strength and long-term durability of your investment management partners is critical. In our view, that requires disciplined financial stewardship. That's something that we have practiced almost from day one. You can see in that first bullet, we have historically squirreled away 75% of our profits in order to build our balance sheet for a rainy day. The second element that I think gives us greater stability is product diversification. The investment market, like life, has cycles and products have cycles. And one of the reasons why it was important to buy Piedmont is that they gave us that sort of stability that when our cycle products are out of favor, they're there and vice versa. We have a stable team, and then we already talked about succession planning, particularly through the ESOP. So that would be our answer to, you know, we think we have built a firm that lasts even in troubled and interesting times as today. Let's talk, if there are no questions, let's talk about the investment strategy and philosophy. Just to, you know, cut to the chase, because I know we're time constrained, is we believe that if you engage entrepreneurial managers, particularly, and you engage them early, and we're going to talk about that, you know, as we proceed, in capacity constrained areas, you have a good shot of outperforming both the benchmark and their manager peers. The three tenets behind what I just said is on the next page. And so you can see all we did was look at smaller managers in this particular category, international small cap, relative to their large peers, and you can see the small ones outperform. The second is we believe that obviously it's not just, you can't just go with small, you have to skillfully select, but importantly, you have to be early because you want to gain capacity and also, quite frankly, allow, you know, gain an attractive fee to offer to your clients. And so that's the second tenet. The third is that, you know, you don't want to, what the advantage you get with small managers is that they have a better shot for highly active strategies of outperforming, particularly in the non-US space. So what that bottom left chart shows is the relationship between active share, which is a measure of how active a manager is, and performance. And you can see it's positive. The chart to the right shows that, lo and behold, when managers get bigger or gain more assets, they actually become less active. And so we think of ourselves as being in the sweet spot, particularly on the non-US side, of hiring active, highly skilled managers.
Gina, I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
How many, so do you work with the managers to graduate them out? Do you keep them in your portfolio when they, you know, what is the threshold for a manager to stay in your portfolio? Like, is it an AUM threshold? Is it a?
It's an excellent question. Let's go back to the last page, and I can actually, you see the one on the top right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as I said, we invest early. This actually are not random lines. This is an actual manager.
Okay.
And so when we evaluated that manager, we said, all right, you know, the drivers of their performance are thus and so, you know, different things, right? And we said to them, okay, Mr. Manager, what is the capacity, in your opinion, of this product, given the drivers of your performance? And so we set that up front. And so in this case, the manager said, I believe they said 5 to 7 billion. And so, and we, based on our analysis, we agreed with them. And so what we do when they get to that prearranged threshold, we go to the client and their consultant and say, this is a manager. We don't wait till the exact threshold. We, you know, we give a little margin. We go to the client and their consultant and say, this manager is ready for escape velocity. And that's how we do it. So we don't have, you know, 2 billion, 3 billion. It's based on, we tailor it to each manager.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
All right. On the next page is sort of the other end. So graduation is sort of the end of the line. This talks about what we do at the beginning of the line. And we take manager development really seriously. In fact, one of our senior investment professionals runs this program. And there are a number of ways in which we help managers. We coach, you know, several firms. One of them is among your lineup, Channing, for example, just did a non-US product, well, not just 2 or 3 years ago, and we helped that marriage. So product development, we will work with managers to beta test new products. And then the ecosystem, which is on the next page, is the Keela, there we go. Is something that is really critical and unique to Exponents. And so what this is I just mentioned, these are tough times for active managers. And so what we did here is, so for all the vendors whose logos are depicted, we negotiated bulk discounts, and they're significant, 20 to 60%, where if we have a manager that is really talented as an investment professional, but doesn't have the capital, you know, to fully sort of capitalize themselves, we refer them to the ecosystem in order to, in essence, stretch their capital. I always say the ecosystem is like a business accelerator without providing the office space. And so that's something that's really unique to Exponents. The result of all this activity shown on the next page, which I always say, whenever I go off into the sunset in 20 years, this is the page I'm most proud of. And the reason is, this is the page that evidences the opportunity that we're provided to managers. So we have funded 53 products, and of that, we have been the early funder or seeder, if you will, of almost 80% of those products. And more importantly, the line right below that, of those managers that we gave that first funding shot to, 69%, almost 70%, are MW and MBE or WBE, and you can see the breakdown below that. It's almost 50% MBE, 20% woman-owned, meaning non-MBE female. That's our impact at the beginning of the train, if you will, for the investment management industry. Next slide, Keela. So we have 6 people whose job it is to go all over the world, the country, to find talent. This is a result of their work. And so we have 111 approved products. You can see the categories under which they are distributed. You'll notice that each line says, you know, X number of managers in the pipeline. And that's because at any given point, you know, those 6 people are going all over trying to find new talent. The other thing I would point out on this page is the bottom right box, which shows that, again, it's still a very diverse group of managers. Next page, Keela. This is, you know, the traditional funnel. I'm not going to take this, a busy slide, so I'm not going to take you through everything here, just point out a few things. The first thing is on the sourcing end, you see a number of ways in which we source. We put external databases there because we almost felt we had to, but quite frankly, it's not that important for us. Obviously, if we are seeding 80% of the products we fund, that means we didn't turn on a database to find them. And so, you know, what's really important is professional networks, seed-in conferences, you know, relationship with venture capital firms. That's where we get most of our sourcing. I'll talk in a minute about our proprietary performance analysis system called April. And then the next two phases is where the real work is done. This is where, you know, the managers do their slice and dice the portfolios 50 ways through Sunday. They visit them. First it's an analyst, then we have a separate operations due diligence team to conduct due diligence. The last stage is the analyst has to present a report that's about a ½ inch thick to the investment committee that I chair. The job of the investment committee is to poke holes in the analyst report. And then once they answer it, the manager comes in and presents. One of the ways in which we align our analysts is that their bonus structure is based on the performance of the managers that they bring forth. So that's like total alignment with client experience. On this next page, again, lots of different factors. Some of the things that everybody will tell you, obviously you want people of integrity, obviously you want talented, experienced people. That's baseline. What will we do different? One is we use a lot of sort of behavioral science on the process segment, in that these are, you know, these are smaller entities, they're star structures. And, you know, if the star is talented, that is a fabulous thing. However, no one is perfect. And so what we focus on is understanding the blind sides of the process so that the manager can sort of, you know, be more risk aware. The other thing we do on the infrastructure side is we have a separate analyst team that looks only at operations. And then on the financial resources, and this became really relevant this last quarter, when we initially do due diligence, what we do is build a profit and loss model for every manager. And then we stress test that model. So we say to the manager, all right, this is kind of how your P&L lines up. What happens when the market drops 30%? What are the decisions that you're going to make to keep this thing afloat? Because we think it's important to plan contingently as opposed to, you know, being surprised. And so when the market in fact did drop 30%, we had a prior conversation that we referred to. Performance obviously is important, and that's where I'm going to talk about the April system on the next page. So Keela mentioned that I, you know, used to be a plan sponsor. And there was a saying that the best way to get a bottom quartile manager is to hire them in the top quartile. And then you sort of wait for them to gracefully flip down to the bottom quartile. It's another way of saying that, you know, many of the standard measurements of evaluating skill are not really predictive. On the top left is information ratio, a measure of risk adjusted return. And so it's what it basically says is there is no relationship between information ratio in time t versus t plus 5. It's a random number. Similarly, peer group rankings not predictive. The April system that we developed is we've found to be more predictive. And the key to the April system is that it extracts style effects that both of the top two measures confuse to be skill. Next slide is just the factors that we evaluate in our operational due diligence system. And then on the next slide is our portfolio construction. We think our portfolio construction, particularly using the April system, is top class. Obviously it has to start with your guidelines. And then the next stage is to, qualify our buy list, which has each product has a conviction score. And so we want to pick the managers for whom we have the highest conviction that are in accordance with your guidelines. And then the next phase is risk evaluation, and we look at risks in two ways. One is we want a diversified portfolio. The second is we do risk budgeting, where every manager in your portfolio is occupying precious real estate. And so all risk budgeting does, it says, given the risk with respect to variance from the benchmark, otherwise known as tracking error, or downside risk, are you worth it? And so that's what sort of my plain vanilla way of saying risk budget. And those are the two sort of measures three measures, that we incorporate into our optimization. On the next page is a
Tina, we have less than 5 minutes. Can we go to the portfolio risk like monitoring and how you, once you've got them in and you've selected them, if you're inheriting the same managers from Progress, what would it look like for portfolio risk control and monitoring going forward?
All right, I can actually better answer that question on this from this. Okay. So, I have seen, first of all, we have seen the portfolio and we have relationships with all but one. I mean, we know all of them, but all but one are existing managers with us. So it would be an easy transition. But so this is part of the framework that we would use though. And so when we construct a portfolio, one of the things we want to do is to make sure that you have coverage across a complete market cycle. So for example, one of your managers is ARGA, who we think really highly of. I would plot ARGA as manager A. They're a deep value manager. They do best in that when all the stuff below in the gray is doing well. I would plot Ativo in that sort of growth, would be somewhat akin to manager C. Same thing with strategic. Brown would also be in that category.
Tina, just so you know, we do not have the names of those 5 underlying managers.
Oh,
so we haven't met them. So I just want to let you know that if you're mentioning names, we don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
my bad.
That's okay.
And so my point in mentioning the names is that I would think of it in this framework, and the point of this framework is to make sure you have coverage because, for example, I don't see a manager D in your lineup. And manager D is your insurance policy when things go really awry.
Right.
So to answer your question more directly, what would I do? I would probably want to add a manager D. Does that help with how we would think about it?
Hey, Tina,
Yes.
can I ask you a question about, typically we have, as you know, we have the 5 underlying managers.
Yeah.
What is that a typical emerging manager portfolio, or would you have one more maybe, or one less, or?
Oh, I think given the size of the account, this is a, a decent number of managers. I think this is fine.
Okay.
I would tweak it a little, but in the way I just mentioned. Right. I apologize for being so specific in my response to the question, but.
Well, it just shows your passion. And I guess for us, we're in this situation. We didn't want to be in this situation. And for us, it's going to be to take over a whole portfolio, as well as the cost associated with maybe tweaking a portfolio or reducing the amount of managers in a portfolio. And that's why Andrew was asking that question is, given, is it, do you see it going to 3? Do you see it slowly going to 3 over time, given cost? We just wanted to just get kind of a picture.
I think 4 to 5 is 4 would be fine. I mean, in other words, if you looked at each quadrant, if you had a manager in each quadrant, you'd be plenty diversified, is kind of one way of thinking about it. Let me quickly go to the page you were directing me to, and this is the last page on the investment process. I mean, we monitor at different frequencies. First of all, on a daily basis, we input your guidelines and our guidelines into our operational system. And we arrange with our clients to have the trade-in piped into our system. So if your guidelines say you can't buy stock ABC and the manager slips up and buys stock ABC, we almost instantaneously see the trade, and we see it in time for them to reverse it, so it doesn't cost you anything. That's what daily is. On a monthly and quarterly basis, we, obviously we're talking to the managers about performance, firm developments, etc. On an annual basis, we do a desk audit or compliance officer, and that's what's on the next page, does kind of a really detailed, almost like an SEC desk audit. She would kill me for describing it that way, but that's all the parameters that she looks at. And then we visit with the managers on a fairly frequent basis just to make sure their shops are up to stuff.
Okay. I like the safeguards that you have, Tina. I really like that.
They come from 25 years of experience of being burnt.
Amen.
But I appreciate the compliment.
Amen.
So Tina, one of the questions that I've been talking to Lewis about is really just trying to get a better handle of, obviously, Chicago Equity closed shop. And so the biggest thing is, do you have these managers, like obviously you do a desktop audit, internal audit, but I guess from my perspective, do you see managers sending like our fund an annual compliance sheet that says, hey, we've looked at your guidelines and we are in compliance with your guidelines? Do you see that on an individual level?
It's done internally. And so if the board wanted to, avail themselves of that, the result of the desk audit is exactly that. And so, we will be as transparent with respect to that as, the board desires. I will say that we have, it's not in this deck, but we do have watch list and probation sort of triggers, if you will. And many of the triggers that, get a manager in that situation are compliance or guidelines related. It's quite frankly, if we're doing our job in terms of selecting skillful managers and monitoring them, that should be the less frequent, way for a manager to be placed on probation. So typically when that happens, we write a 1-page or maybe maximum 2-page memo to, in this case, it would be, the CIO. But again, if the board wants to see it, that's fine. And so we would say, manager XYZ breached this. Here's what we're doing to, deal with the problem. First of all, we'll probably send our operations due diligence folks out to the shop and then figure out sort of amelioration measures that would get them back to satisfactory. And all that would be transparent to you.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. I'll just ask it. So the fee is the 50 basis points flat because unfortunately we were in this, as you probably know, at the end of the year, this was a $50 million portfolio. It's drifted down as of the end of April to about 44.
Yeah.
So it's improved a little bit because it was lower than that. Is that still in line with the fee schedule for you guys?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
What we created, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Does anyone have
How much? I'm sorry. How much time do we have, Chris?
I think we're good on time. I just wanted to open up the questions to our trustees to see if they have any questions of Tina and Kilo before we end our presentation. Can we close out the presentation? So
Sheila, could you close that out?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Stop the share.
All right. Now I see your beautiful faces.
Yeah.
All right.
So question for transition, how long would you be talking about from a transition perspective?
Unfortunately, Kristen, we've been answering that question quite a bit recently. I don't think, for the last situation, I think it took, once they figured out the mandate change, because they slightly changed the mandate, I believe it was less than a month.
Wow.
And then as it relates to, obviously with Progress closing, have you all gained a lot of assets and from that transition, and then also any losses in 2019?
Sure, yeah, I can answer that. So directly from the Progress event, so far this year, we've gained about $200 million in assets. Aside from that, though, we've gained over 500 million in assets in our other strategies. So far year to date, we've raised, I think, about 733 million altogether. As far as account losses in 2019, we did have one account loss, not in this strategy, in a different strategy. Speaking of a different manager strategy, and that was just the client wanted to change the structure of their program. And so the decision was made in 2019, but the client actually just transitioned the assets last month.
Right.
So it was not based on performance, it was based on structural changes?
It was a structure.
Yes.
Okay.
They went to direct, basically.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, managing their own program, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the performance of, you've talked about the performance, but just a little bit kind of, the line item, obviously, that your clients are seeing. Obviously, there are, some negative posted numbers. So if you could just touch upon kind of what was going on, why, and how you are, whether that was expected or not expected.
So the 2018 was not expected because, again, it was a transition to give you a sense of numbers, and don't totally hold me to this because it's partly based on memory, but we were something like 15% on the way to the US because of the portfolio transition. And in 2018, the US outperformed non-US by 5%. So if you do the math, that's the entire underperformance due to that, the timing of that portfolio transition. And yeah, we've had some negative numbers, here on and there. Other than that one, and we are an investment product. As someone said, the only investment product that has never had a negative number is Bernie Madoff, where he was cooking the book. So yes, I will tell you where we struggle, just to be upfront, about where, because every investment product has strengths and weaknesses. What are our strengths? Well, our portfolio construction, that cycle thing that I took you through, is very, it diversifies the portfolio's exposure to do well in different types of markets, right? The one I showed you. So if you have a market in which one segment is, massively outperforming the other for a long period of time, we will underperform. And for obvious reasons, we're allocated across 4 segments, and only one segment is, producing performance. I will say, so that when you have a very skewed market, I will say, obviously, cycles reverse, right? And so once a cycle reverses, that's where the wisdom of our diversified, portfolio structures bear its fruits. But in those periods, we will struggle. 2017 and 2016 in our EM product, that's an example. Kristen, you might remember in 2017, the only thing doing well was China tech, right? And so, and if you actually break it down beyond China tech, you're probably talking about 4 names. So, you had highly skew within a highly skew. That's not a market that we will participate in. But as you can see in our since inception numbers, obviously we must have been doing something right, because despite those really, really unfavorable periods, it sort of works out in the end for our clients. I don't think you want us as a manager to chase, the hot dot in the market. That never works well, because eventually the hot dot changes. And that's what this portfolio is positioned to do.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm an investment geek, so if I sound geeky, I apologize.
Thanks. Thank you. We know you're Miss Regression, but that's all right.
I am very passionate about that and providing opportunity.
Okay, is there anything else? You all are muted, so Christina and...
Oh, does anybody else have any questions from the trustee side?
I think you covered it all as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kristen covered the rest of it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And formally say that we want to work for you all. We want the business. I just want to ask for it and tell you that we would do a good job for you. And thank you very, very much. If selected, we would be very thankful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
You guys
okay.
too. So at this point, yeah, we would, the two of you, thank you so much and we finally did this, we finally got it together, and I'm really glad of that. And we're right on the cusp of this thing, but I think we're going to get it done. So I appreciate
All
your time.
right.
So at this point, I would ask you guys,
To accept.
to leave the
Yeah.
meeting. It's that's okay. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything other than that's
accept-
the
well, then, all
logistics
right,
of it.
We will.
Right, right.
Bye.
All
Thank
right.
you, ladies.
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, thank you.
Bye.
May I say something before we jump in? You guys have two. You have an option. You could either go right to the chase, discuss this a little bit, not in too much detail even, and then make your decision, or we can close the meeting and you can go in and talk about it in depth. So
Christina, what are your views on that?
So you said, I would like to close the meeting and go into in depth about where we want to go, talk about a little bit more about structure, fees and whatnot. So I think the presentations were great. And then I'd like to close this
Hold on just a
special
second,
business
okay?
meeting.
Okay, hold on just a second. I
Can
gotta
you
find
provide me the actual wording, Andrew?
it.
please?
Yeah, that's when I'm here. You got to bear with me. It's a little bit cumbersome.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes, so I would like to close the meeting and that all records and votes to the extent permitted by law during the closed portion of the meeting be closed pursuant to section 610.021 subsection 112 of the Missouri Revised Statutes for the purpose of discussing a negotiated contract.
A second.
I second.
Okay. Do you have any? Is there anybody has any questions? I'm just going to go right to that. Otherwise, Lewis.
Andrew, do we need a roll call, please?
Yes, you need a roll
Yeah,
call.
we have a roll
Yeah,
call.
roll call,
We'll take a
please.
roll call vote now.
Angela Banks,
Yes.
Christina Bennett,
Yes.
Darnetta Clinkscale,
Yes.
Lewis Cross,
Yes.
Sheila Goodwin,
Yes.
Donna Jones,
Yes.
Yvette Levy,
Yes.
Bobby Richardson,
Yes.
Albert Sanders,
Yes.
and you have 9. So hold on. I'm going to take this down. And at this point, I've got to do a couple things here. It takes just a second, guys. I apologize for that. But there we are. Okay, so now I'm going to put up the motion.
Okay. So I think we've had great discussion and I think we're ready to move to the next steps.
Okay.
Can I get the screen, please?
I'm trying to find it.
Okay.
Okay.
Doggone it. Actually, I don't know where it went, guys. Hold on. There it is. Okay, so it's that second one.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to open the meeting pursuant to section 610.021 of the Missouri Revised Statutes. Can I get a second?
A second.
That was Bobby Richardson that seconded.
Yes.
Andrew,
Let's have a roll call.
yes, may I have a roll call, please?
Angela Banks,
Yes.
Christina Bennett,
Yes.
Darnetta Clinkscale,
Yes.
Lewis Cross,
Yes.
Sheila Goodwin,
Yes.
Donna Jones,
Yes.
Yvette Levy,
Yes.
Bobby Richardson,
Yes.
Albert Sanders.
Yes.
You have 9 motion. Yes, you have 9.
Okay, so the motion carries to come out of closed session. Okay, Chris.
So Andrew, can I get the I get the document to
You sure can.
yes, thank you.
And there you go.
So I would like to make a motion to terminate the investment management agreement with Progress Management Company and hire Exponents to manage the systems manager of emerging managers of global equity portfolio with a current estimated market value of 43 million. Can I get a second?
I second.
Okay,
I heard Sheila.
okay.
Yes.
Andrew, may I get a roll call, please?
Angela Banks,
Yes.
Christina Bennett,
Yes.
Darnetta Clinkscale,
Yes.
Lewis Cross,
Yes.
Sheila Goodwin,
Yes.
Donna Jones,
Yes.
Yvette Levy,
No.
Bobby Richardson,
Yes.
Albert Sanders,
Yes.
and you have 8 yeses and 1 no.
Okay. So the yeses have it. So we now move on to the next phase, Chris.
Um,
No, it's adjourned.
So if there's no other further business, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Nope, you need a first.
Got a roll call?
No, someone, I heard a second.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting today, our finance meeting for today.
Second.
Okay. And then
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? No. So the meeting is adjourned, and thank you all so much.
Good night. Happy Teacher Appreciation Week.
Congratulations.
Oh, happy teachers.
All right.
Appreciation
I'm
Week.
glad everybody's safe.
And
Hope to
Bye,
see you all
everybody.
Cinco
soon.
de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, that's
stopping
right.
this live stream now.